Welcome to the Mind Solution Podcast with Sarah Maud. The Mind Solution Podcast is for leaders like you who are passionate about well-being in the workplace because you understand that a strong, resilient and happy workforce is the key to your organisation's success. The Mind Solution Podcast is here to help you. So join us every week where we'll share with you powerful insights, strategies and know-how to ensure that your people and your organisation are truly thriving from the inside out. Hello and welcome. This is your host, Sarah Maud. And I'm hopping on here today to talk about empathy because I'm seeing a lot more posts recently, particularly on LinkedIn, talking about empathy and how our leaders need to be empathetic, especially in the context of mental health and well-being. Now, the term empathy is one that I'm sure that pretty much most of us can associate with. But the word itself it's a nominalization. All words are nominalizations. And what I mean by that is that they can mean slightly different things to different people. So I want to give you my take on what empathy really is. And that take comes from having held over 10,000 one-to-one sessions with people. And what I believe that we need, what the key ingredients is that we need within ourselves in order to not only display empathy, but to really experience the feeling of empathy. Because empathy isn't a word, well, it is a word, but it is an experience. In the same way that every other emotion that we experience is an experience of that emotion. Now, for me, empathy really at the heart of it is about connection. And in order to be truly empathetic with somebody, we have to feel something within ourselves so that we can connect with another person. Now, that doesn't mean that you've had to have gone through the same experience. You know, if you've got somebody that's in your team that's sharing with you something that they've gone through or something that they're going through, like a bereavement, a trauma, a divorce, miscarriage, the menopause, any number of things that as humans we experience that is life, we don't have to have had that experience ourselves in order to connect with that person. But we do need to feel something within ourselves because connection is feeling. And quite often, empathy and sympathy are a little bit misunderstood. They're a little bit mixed up. So for me, empathy is about really holding a space for somebody. So somebody's sharing something with me, whatever that is, and I'm just holding that space. And I'm really allowing that person to connect with themselves. I'm really allowing that person to explore in their own mind, in their own body, what it is that they're thinking, what it is that they're feeling. So empathy is not about offering advice. It's not about giving condolences or making suggestions. But quite often that's what our managers and leaders are doing under the guise of empathy. And it's something that I see time and time again in the managers and leaders that go through our management mental health program. And they're quite honest and confess that if somebody shared something with them, they want to make it better. They feel like they have to go into problem-solving mode. They feel like they need to fix something. But that is not empathy. Empathy is a connection that isn't an intellectual connection. It's not a head-to-head connection. Empathy is a feeling that we have within us, deep within us, that creates that absolute sense of connection with somebody else. So we have to feel something within ourselves. We have to open our heart to really connect, because we're connecting from the energetic level of the heart and not the head. But the tricky part is that so many people are living their life in their heads, and they're very disconnected from their body. And if you're disconnected from your body, then you're disconnected from how you're feeling. And if you're disconnected from how you're feeling, how can you truly experience connection? How can you truly experience empathy? And given that about 70% of people are living in the hormones of stress, which is the survival response, which means that people are caught in that freeze, fight and flight response. If you're in survival mode, the only thing that you're really concerned with is survival. Now that survival isn't a threat to life most of the time, but it's what we're experiencing as survival in terms of juggling kids, juggling packed lunches, juggling 200 emails, deadlines, PTA meetings, any number of things that have got us living in that stress response that maybe we're not even aware of. Maybe we've got so used to feeling like that it's become the norm instead of the exception, and we're not listening to the body. We're not listening to what the body's trying to communicate with us. And the other tricky part when it comes to real connection, really experiencing empathy for somebody else, is that in order for us to connect with ourselves, we have to feel something. But a lot of people, and I say this from having worked with thousands of people, a lot of people are often very uncomfortable with feeling their own emotions. People are ignoring their emotions, and sometimes they're ignoring their emotions because it's like, I've got too much to do. I haven't got time to be feeling what I'm feeling because I'm busy doing life. Or they're pushing down their emotions because their emotions are a little bit like a hand grenade. They don't really know what to do with them. And where emotions can be quite intense, well, not quite intense, it can be really intense. If you don't know what to do with those emotions and they feel very scary, then it's easier for us to push them down, to ignore them, to distract ourselves, to try and find a way to almost numb ourselves from what we're feeling. And we do live incredibly busy lives. You know, we're going from one thing to the next, and the vast majority of people, they're not creating space to tune into their body. They're not creating the space to tune into what the body is communicating, what they're really feeling. And that leads to a lack of self-awareness. And self-awareness for me is the absolute key ingredients when it comes to being able to connect, to empathize with another person. Because if you don't know what you're feeling and why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, how can you really empathize with what another human being is going through? If you've spent most of your life ignoring your feelings, stuffing them down, disconnecting from them, then empathy is something which becomes quite superficial. And we might think that we're being empathetic if we're trying to sympathize instead of empathize, and we're trying to fix and make suggestions. But without that self-awareness, we can't truly empathize with what somebody else is going through. And I know from working with people that in a session, whether that session is 30 minutes, whether it's 60 minutes, 90 minutes, whether it's an intensive coaching session, there's often a lot of emotion that can come out of sessions that I do with working professionals, because it's the first time that maybe they've given themselves space, they've given themselves permission, they've given themselves time to explore their feelings, to explore their emotions, to reflect on what's going on in their internal world. And when we give ourselves that space and time, it's like the body goes, oh, finally they're listening. And when you are in a space where it's a safe space, then those emotions are able to be processed. They're able to come to the surface. We're able to just experience them. You know, we don't have to fix emotions. You know, whether you're experiencing fear or anxiety or dread or panic, it's not about fixing them. It's about feeling them. Because emotions are energy. If we think about it, if you think about the word, emotion is energy in motion. But our emotions get stuck in the body because we're not tuning in. We're so disconnected, or we've spent such a long time ignoring them, pushing them down, doing whatever we can to numb ourselves, distract ourselves. So when people first start to really feel emotions, it can be a bit like, oh, this feels really uncomfortable. I don't want to go there. But when you're in a space, as people are when I'm coaching them, to a safe space where they are safe to be vulnerable, they're safe to feel the emotion. When we feel the emotion, we're actually regulating that emotion, we're processing it, we're releasing it, we're letting it flow through the body and out, so that it's not stuck and it's not keeping us in a holding pattern, in that stress response. Now, for me personally, I've been in this field for more than 10 years. And in the last 10 years, I think it's safe to say that I've had at least 300 one-to-one coaching sessions, if not more. So I'm very familiar. It's second nature for me to be aware of what's going on in my own internal landscape. If I'm feeling off balance, then it's very familiar and it's very comfortable for me to explore that feeling. To understand, okay, where's my focus of attention? Where am I creating this experience? And then what do I need to do to release that? What do I need to do to regulate my emotions? So when I'm working with somebody on a one-to-one level, I experience the most beautiful and profound sense of connection, because I'm so comfortable with myself and my level of self-awareness, my level of consciousness. Now, it wasn't always like that. I mean, if I go back to the days that I worked in human resources when I didn't know anything about this, I'm pretty sure that I thought I was doing a good job at being empathetic. But if I think about the me back then compared to the me now that's worked so much on myself, that's raised my level of consciousness, that's got very comfortable with feeling emotion, then it's like chalk and cheese. And one of the things that I'm told constantly, whether it's from my one-to-one coaching clients or whether it's from people that I'm talking to in a group, whether that's our management mental health training programs, whether it's our webinars, our intensive sessions, the word empathy comes up time and time again as a word that people describe me as, which is a beautiful piece of feedback. I love that people feel that sense of empathy. They feel it because I'm connecting with them, because I'm also connected to myself. So if we've got leaders that don't have that level of self-awareness, how can we expect them to truly empathize with the people around them? You know, if I think about what I see with the people that I work with, I see so many people that are distracting themselves from how they feel because they're not used to feeling feelings. I see them so disconnected. So if we think about addiction's a classic example. With addiction, we're using coping mechanisms to soothe ourselves, to distract ourselves from what we're really feeling. And we're using that in the form of alcohol. You know, how many of us, myself included, how many of us have come back from work, finished a day's work, and we've reached for a glass of wine, we've reached for a beer, a vodka, whatever, because we're really looking for something to make us feel better in the moment. We're looking for something to soothe us, to relax us, to distract ourselves from what it is that we're really feeling. You know, we're doing it again with food. How many of us reach for our favourite foods? How many of us are binge eating? Or we're reaching for sugary products again? We're looking for something in the moment to make us feel better. Smoking again. We're looking for something to change the way that we feel. Prescription painkillers, cannabis. And this is all happening in the workplace. You know, quite often I hear the word addiction and people think about addiction as something that happens to other people. You know, addiction is something that happens with homeless people. But addiction, it's there, it's in the workplace. You know, the highest rates of alcoholism, for example, is within the medical profession. It's within the law society. Lawyers, medical practitioners, surgeons have got the highest rate of alcoholism in the working profession. You know, these people are under intense pressure, and if they don't know how to regulate that with themselves, and especially if I think about the medical profession and even the law profession, you know, you're dealing with a lot of intense emotion, you know, particularly thinking about lawyers that are dealing with, say, family law, divorce. It's kind of different to maybe construction. I mean, I'm guessing that. If you're a lawyer and you disagree, then feel free to reach out and correct me. But you're dealing with really high emotion. And I know myself as a therapist, there were days in the past when I might get home from my private clinic and I was working full time as a practitioner, and I might have seen 6, 7 people. I was cabbaged. I was absolutely spent and cabbaged, because dealing with intense emotion, dealing with other people's emotion, it can be very draining. So it's very easy for us to reach for something in the moment that can make us feel better. And there's no shame in that. There is no shame in that at all, because we're always doing what makes sense to us. So if it makes sense to us to make our favourite food and drink a bottle of wine, then that's what you're doing, because it makes sense. But when it comes to what we're using consistently to make us feel better, then the red flags go up, because we're looking for something outside of us to neutralize our emotions, to numb us, to make us feel different to how we're feeling, because how we're feeling is quite uncomfortable. And when we're doing that on a regular basis, it stops us, it prevents us from just being with our feelings. And that can be a real block to connecting with ourselves, and it can absolutely be a block to connecting with other people. And you know, I was actually running a management mental health training session yesterday, and there were a number of managers that were sharing some really deep personal accounts of what they've experienced in the last few days. And some of them had experienced divorce, some of them had experienced bereavement and trauma. And it was really interesting to hear what they were saying, because they spoke about how the people around them, whether that was people in the workplace, whether that was loved ones, they all wanted to do something to make the individual feel better. And that was in the form of, well, you need to do this, or have you thought about this, or you should do this. And again, that's not empathy. It feels sometimes like it's empathy because we're trying to do something to make that other person feel better, and it's very natural. It's very natural that we want to make people feel better. But that is not empathy. It's not real connection. We're just doing it usually because we feel really uncomfortable. We don't know what else to say. We feel that we need to leap in there and we need to fix how that other person's feeling. But again, when we're able to really hold that space, there's no fixing involved with empathy. Even if you don't know what to say, that's absolutely okay. You know, if somebody shared something really deep with you, it's okay to say, I don't know what to say. But I'm really glad that you shared that with me. And one of the most powerful ways to experience both empathy and connection, I mean, I see them as one in the same, is to really listen. And not to listen from the head, but to listen from our heart, which is one of the things that we teach on our management mental health program. And when you're really listening on that very deep, energetic level, that's when you experience true connection. And the other person experiences that true connection. And whether you want to call that empathy, then go ahead. So what can you do to begin as a leader to experience a deeper connection with people? Well, you have to start by connecting with yourself. Now, I don't see that there's one perfect way of connecting with yourself. There's no necessarily right way or wrong way. There's not really a 3-step process or 7-step process to connect with yourself. One of the ways that I know for myself has really helped me to explore what I'm feeling is through journaling. And it's a practice that for me, I have done consistently over the last 10, 11 years. And I don't journal every single day, but one of the first things that I do on a morning is I get a hot drink and I just sit and it's like, to me, it's like a stream of consciousness. And I find that very, very powerful. And one of the things that I really find powerful is that about every 6 months, I will go back through my journals. And I find that a really beneficial thing to do to raise my level of awareness, to raise my level of consciousness, and to also remind myself of how far I've come, to remind myself of the lessons that I've learnt, or the lessons that I learnt but I've ended up going back into some old habitual thinking or some old patterns of behaviour. So for me, that inner exploratory work, that inner reflection is very powerful, because we spend so much time in our heads. So for me, journaling is a wonderful way of reflecting and connecting. Now, for other people, it might be to spend 10, 15 minutes in a place of meditation, and to use meditation as a way, again, of connecting with the body, of connecting with what's the body saying to me, what's the body trying to tell me, what am I feeling? And the more that we can quieten the mind, the more that we can experience that sense of stillness, of peace of mind, that can make such a difference when we're connecting with other people. Because if you're trying to connect with people and to really empathize with people, and you've got 100 thoughts that are jumping around begging for your attention, then that's going to compromise your ability to really empathize and connect. Now, if journaling and if meditation isn't your cup of tea, then what would work for you? What's going to need to happen for you to develop a greater sense of awareness? Maybe it's something around moving your physical body in a way that allows you to connect with your body. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about going to the gym, I'm not talking about running, but maybe there are physical things like yoga. Yoga can really help us to connect with our body. Now, it might be that for you as a leader, that you need some space. You need space to explore emotions that maybe you've been pushing down or ignoring. And like me, one of the things that I've used is coaching. So from the more than 300 sessions of coaching, I've got to know myself really well. And I'm not massively into yoga. I'm about as flexible as a plank of wood, if I'm really honest with you. Journaling worked for me, and that's why I've stuck with it. But coaching, I find coaching so powerful, because it's somebody else that's shining a light up, is reflecting things back to me, things that maybe I haven't seen. And when I see them, when I create that insight for myself, I'm like, okay. And the more that I do that, the more that I become self-aware, the more that I raise my level of connection, and then I can experience just more greater levels of connection with people that I'm working with. So maybe for you, this is about some leadership coaching. But whatever works for you doesn't matter. It's a case of starting it. And really asking yourself, where are you distracting yourself in life? What is it that you're maybe trying to avoid? You know, there's nothing wrong with having a bit of a Netflix binge or an Amazon Prime binge. But if, again, you're doing that on a constant basis, you're using television, alcohol, food, drugs, like prescription painkillers, if you're doing all of that as a way of zoning out, then you're disconnecting from yourself and you're compromising your ability as a leader to truly experience connection with other people. So I hope that you found this episode helpful. And if you're listening to this and this is resonating and you're thinking, yeah, I really want to start to be a better leader, to be more empathetic, to really experience connection both with myself and then with my people, then jump onto the website www.themindsolution, where you can book your free consultation in with me and we can start to explore what needs to happen and how I can help you. But thank you for listening, and I look forward to connecting with you again very soon. Bye bye for now.